All right, today we're jumping into a really short, but wow, incredibly powerful piece of writing. It's all about this idea of covenants, but not just as promises, but as sacred, protected spaces. So let's start with a question to kind of get our heads in the right space. Are some boundaries meant to be invisible? We think of boundaries as things we can actually see, like a fence or a wall. But what if the most important ones, the ones with the heaviest consequences, are the ones we can't see at all? And that idea leads us right into our first big concept here, the guarded boundary. The text we're looking at talks about certain commitments as being way more than just a promise you make. Now, this quote is where things get really interesting. The text says, marriage is a guarded boundary before God. It's not just a line you shouldn't cross. The key word here is guarded. That one word implies that it's being actively protected, which changes everything. So what does that really mean? Well, it totally reframes how you look at it. A commitment like marriage isn't just a personal promise between two people anymore. It becomes, as the text puts it, a sacred space. It's a territory with a divinely enforced perimeter. It's a whole different ballgame. So this whole idea of a guarded boundary naturally makes you wonder, okay, what really separates a covenant from just a regular everyday promise? Let's break that down. What is it that elevates a covenant to a whole other level? We make promises all the time, right? But this text is arguing that a covenant, well, it operates in a different league entirely, with much, much higher stakes. And this comparison just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you've got your standard human agreement. It's basically a contract, the people involved keep an eye on it, and, it can be broken or changed. But on the other side, you have what the text calls a divine trust. This is a sacred responsibility. It's witnessed and guarded by a higher power. It just carries a totally different kind of weight, a divine weight, and consequences to match. Okay, so if these boundaries are divinely guarded, what happens when you even get close to one? This is where it gets really serious, and the text gives us a pretty stark example to explain what it calls the danger of approach. And to show this isn't just some abstract theory, the text brings up a story about a historical figure, a guy named Abimelech, and his story serves as this really clear and frankly pretty severe lesson about what these boundaries are all about. And here it is, the heart of the example. Get this phrasing, though he had not acted, even the approach carried weight, and the warning of God was severe. Think about that. He hadn't actually done anything yet. He was just approaching the boundary, and that alone was enough to trigger a major warning. So the takeaway here is huge. When you're talking about a divine boundary, just getting close is a violation. The intent to cross, or even just entertaining the thought, carries real weight. The approach itself becomes part of the problem. So if just getting close is that big of a deal, how exactly does someone cross or encroach on this kind of boundary? Well, the text breaks it down for us into three specific categories: deed, word, and intention. First, let's get the official definition straight from the source. Encroachment is defined as this: to entertain what belongs to another. And that word entertain is so perfect. It's not just about doing something, it's about letting the idea take up space in your head. And this breaks down into three clear levels. First, you have the deed. That's the obvious one, the physical action that crosses the line. Then you have the word, things you say or write that violate that sacred space. And finally, and this is the really subtle one, you have intention. That's the thought or the desire that you entertain. And according to this text, all three of these are serious forms of encroachment. So, when you put it all together, the guarded boundary, the danger of just approaching it, the different ways you can encroach, it all points to one big central idea. This is all a matter of divine trust. And it all boils down to this one powerful line that really ties the whole thing together. Covenant is not merely human agreement, but divine trust. That's the foundation. That's the key that unlocks why these boundaries are taken so seriously. And this is why it all matters. The reason there are consequences isn't just random. It's because crossing that line isn't just about breaking a promise to a person. It's about violating a trust that has a divine witness, a divine guardian. You're not just answering to the other person. You're answering to the guardian of the boundary itself. For today's explainer, we've been unpacking all these ideas from excerpts of a text called The Divine Boundary of Covenant by His Witness T. Alsant. It's a really short read, but man, there's a lot to think about in there.
So we'll leave you with this final thought. The text really hones in on the covenant of marriage, but this concept of a guarded boundary, of a divine trust, you could apply that to so many other things. So, what other guarded boundaries, visible or invisible, do you think shape our lives? Something to chew on.